Today we look at Matthew 12, verses 46 to 50, what seems like a simple passage with a simple message, but as always, these scriptures, called holy, carry messages that have no end to their depths, that can be plummeted throughout the different stages of our lives to discover new meaning, new insight, new revelation. We begin with the reading. While Jesus was still talking to the crowd, his mother and brothers stood outside, wanting to speak with him. Someone told him, "Your mother and brothers are standing outside, wanting to speak to you." He replied to him, "Who is my mother, and who are my brothers?" Pointing to his disciples, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers, for whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." What we have here is a radical statement, a departure from the most basic, natural human instinct, blood relations, love of family, those elements of our existence with which we are so connected, and that in most cultures, especially the one of the ancient Near East, is honored above everything else. We know in cultures today that relationships to mothers are still supremely intense all the way through a lifetime. In Italy, for instance, men live with their mothers throughout their adult lives and are usually devastated at their death in the sense of an attachment, a connection that is supreme. And in this context of honoring father and mother, of living from the foundations of family life, being entirely dependent on it as a survival and sanity, we find Jesus breaking completely with all human tradition. Now, what does this mean to us? That we need to be able to understand in context that family ties, with all of their ups and downs and varied dynamics, are not the only essential connection. That there is something even higher that can bring us closer to other people, and that is a common understanding, not a mental one, not an intellectual agreement, but a spiritual nearness, a spiritual connection that enables both to perceive and value the same things. This is especially obvious in our world today, where so many have rejected and aggressively dislike the deeper things of the sacred, where it is mocked, where there is an ever-widening gulf between those who sense and follow a deeper path and those who live in this material world, fully satisfied, seeing or feeling nothing beyond it. That gulf is so immense that there is no way to communicate at a deeper level. There is no way to share life fully when such a difference of understanding of the nature of life and its purpose lies between us. And so Jesus reveals here that these spiritual bonds between people who can see in a similar way, who can hear, who can live from that kind of understanding and commitment, brings them closer than family ties, than the blood ties that are so fundamental and instinctive to humanity. This is a first-time revelation to the world, that there exists yet a closer connection than that of the family, that people who are driven by their heart's yearning can find true brothers and sisters and parents among others who are also on such a path. This is particularly important for us now, as we find that so many are isolated in their search, have no one to talk to, are rejected by those close to them for those kinds of feelings and perceptions. For many who do not have that true spiritual family contact, this is a tragedy and a pain that simply overwhelms them. I have received so many contacts like that, people in all parts of the world who feel utterly alone in this journey. And to discover that there is such a family, however small, in this world of ours, of people who have responded to that within their essence which calls them to find their way home into the heart of God, is a comfort beyond expressing, because it reveals to us the real connections that we have with one another, that resonance to each other's deeper yearning and understanding. This is the family, those who understand and recognize the nature of life from its spiritual perspective. Jesus says, "For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven." Notice that he doesn't say whoever believes the same thing, whoever follows a similar creed, whoever goes to the same synagogue or church, but whoever does the will of my Father. That is, those who live out, who practice, who incarnate this other way of life, this supreme commitment to goodness and purity and truth, to compassion and mercy. This is what makes us brothers and sisters to the Christ himself. Here he places himself among us as one of us whose heart is open to God. And in that way of being, in that self-sacrifice for greater love, we find that we are one with Christ in that same family. So all of the distinctions and divisions in religion disappear, because now it is not a matter of particular theologies, particular understandings of what is meant, but rather an inner transformation, an inner love that calls us into a lifestyle that is goodness itself manifested in the world, doing the will of the Father, living that unconditional love in real time through our presence in this world. This manifestation of the divine goodness and love is what makes us truly who we are, and to find others like that brings us into a connectedness that is unmatched by all other human relationships. So it is important to recognize that when we feel such a closeness with it is important to recognize that when we feel such a closeness to another person, it is because we have found a home with their hearts, with their minds, with their way of life. It is more than agreement. It is union in that common love of God that causes us to be the best that we can be, to overcome all that is in the way so that we can live such a life. And in that common effort to overcome the obstacles within and without, we find a sense of family that is unique in this world. These are Jesus' radical words calling us to live in that kind of unity with others on the path to the heart of God.